Hello friends, Jennifer Pearson here, Thistle Gypsy, and I'm doing another tarot tag here. I'm doing Jessi Huntenburg's tarot tag for May, and it's hashtag intuitivetarot. So there's 5 questions, so it's not one of those, well, I shouldn't speak first, but hopefully it won't take an awful long time to answer these questions. So the spirit of her question is that there is, I would say there's a real difference, but there's a perceived difference between people who tend to read what is on the card in a very straightforward manner, sort of, going from the memory of the meaning, or I know some people who feel strongly that their job is to describe what's on the card to the person you're reading for and let them, make the associations on their own. So the difference between that and someone who reads the cards intuitively, goes beyond the traditional meanings of the cards, maybe focuses on, to me would be if you're focusing on the specific aspect of a card, as opposed to all of the little things that are in a card. So, that's the spirit of it. There's also the issue of people who will lay out cards and they're clearly tapping into something entirely different. They lay down the cards and then they barely look at them. They're not, and then they just start riffing, on whatever their spiritual messages are or their general messages. And there's very little referral actually back to the cards or back to specific elements within the cards. Now, so those are kind of broad ends of the spectrum. Somebody who, and I would even say that somebody who reads from the book is not a non-intuitive tarot reader. Somebody who reads directly from a book is still learning, to me, is still learning, the deck. Or the system. So I think it's after you've learned the system, to what extent do you adhere to those learned definitions. And so the first question is, in your opinion, what does it mean to read tarot intuitively? I think it's actually difficult not to read tarot intuitively, unless you have a very simple card, and I don't have my cards out here, but and it's difficult for me to think of a card that is so limited that it can't have more than one interpretation in a reading, or there's more than one element within the card to attract the attention of the reader. So, again, there are broad ends of the spectrum, from somebody looking at the Two of Pentacles, that keeps coming to mind. Somebody looking at the Two of Pentacles and saying, you're trying to juggle two things. Okay, so you can say that to somebody. It's a pretty traditional interpretation. To somebody who pulls the card and pretty much glances at it, lays it aside, and starts communicating on maybe all of the different ways you're experiencing imbalances, or they may go off on a completely different tangent. The card was a portal for an infinite number of messages that are coming through. It's almost like with some of those folks, what they do is they use that card or set of cards to tap into that person's energy. And then after that, the card is superfluous. It's not necessary, or the set of cards, the spread is not that necessary. And so to me, those are ends of the spectrum. But again, I think anybody who is looking at the cards, for the most part, unless again they're reciting a memorized definition, that they are accessing their intuition. What aspect of that card are you going to focus on? Are you going to focus on the balancing? Are you going to focus, if we're talking about the Two of Pentacles, the fact that he's on one foot, and he looks like he's juggling. Are you going to concentrate on the infinity sign that's connecting the two things? Are you going to focus on the fact that they're two pentacles? Okay, so that they're two coins. In other words, it's money oriented, it's work, it's specifically for work. Are you going to focus on the background where it's got the ups and downsy waves, and one of the ships is big and one of the ships is small? And that's a relatively simple card, and yet there are all of those different things that you could potentially focus on or interpret differently. For example, okay, I've given you the juggling, and you can do traditional, you're juggling two jobs. It's very traditional, and it's not uncommon that I interpret it that way. You've got two jobs, or you need a second job. You're having difficulty, even balancing your budget, anything like that. Income and outgoes, anything like that, to do with money directly. I've also seen that card come up, and to me was representing testicles. Okay, yes, the physical pair of things there. I recently had it come up in a card reading where I'm pretty sure, I'm not 100%, I'm still kind of mulling with the set of cards, but I think it's saying you're going to have to pay twice, okay? In order to do what you want to do, you're going to have to pay twice. You're going to have to do something twice. So, there you go. Yeah. So number 2, can someone learn to read intuitively? Why or not? Why or why not? Do I think everybody can develop their intuitive, and which in this case I think it's intuitive. There's different levels, I think, to intuition, and I think the basic one is association. What is your association with what you see? What associations are coming up for you? It can also be what associations make sense for the situation, things like that. So there's that level. There's another level where you start to get, and I often call this kind of falling into the card, where you start to be getting information that is not directly related to the card. And that doesn't happen to me a lot. I'm very much a card reader. I'm an image. I call myself sometimes an image junkie. I love the images, so I often read the images. But sometimes something comes up, and I say it, that's part of the risk of being a reader. You just say what comes to you, and if you end up sounding like an idiot, that's okay. And so there's those, certainly the associative thing, I think, is easy and comes. And I think that the more you allow yourself and have confidence in the associations that are coming, it starts to spin out in that other direction. So I would say, can someone learn to read intuitively? Absolutely. But you need to have, I think, a certain level of confidence in your ability and a willingness to be open like that. So are there some people who say, well, I just can't do this? Well, it could be that they can't do it, but I don't think it's because they're lacking some innate ability. I'm getting like all this glare on my glasses, oh well. But that, they don't, they're just not emotionally in a place where they're able to reach out, I suppose, and do that. I don't know if that's the best wording, but there you go. Number 3, how does intuition play a role in your readings? Well, I think as I've rambled here a little bit, I think I've kind of hit on a lot of that. What I focus on in a particular card, how the cards work together. you know, what are the associations with the question being asked. So, excuse me. I think in a wide variety of ways. Sometimes the colors in the card, I seem to be focused on Pentacles coming to mind, but I remember one time the Four of Pentacles came up. Most of the time I pay absolutely no attention to the fact that the figure's robe in that card is black. And there's one time when that card came up and that black was just raw, it was just there. And so that became something that I really focused on, was kind of the mood of that black in that particular situation. Again, I think I've talked a lot as I've rambled here. What's your position on reading intuitively? My position, go for it. I know there's one woman, there are some people who believe that you should, that the fewer cards the better, and you need to dive deeply into those few cards, and that, there's, the correct way to read, or the deeper way, or whatever. It's like, and, I'm just not into the hierarchy thing here with this. So, we're accessing intuition. We're accessing intuition however works for us. If for some people they like to, they fall into a card and they get these really, they can take off into this whole story just based on one card and reel out all of this stuff about the person's life from that one card. That's fantastic. Go for it. Again, that's intuition, I think, taking you along. And that's fine. There's another person I know, and she practically pulls half the deck, reeling out cards and reeling out cards. And, and she's, to me, she's still giving valid messages, so I don't think I think that you are using your intuition, unless you're reciting. And again, there's all of these levels to intuition. So unless you're reciting a memorized definition of the card, you're using your intuition. I think that I think I think it's personal preference as far as being a client, what you want from the reader. Are you happy with somebody who just riffs along as long as it seems relevant to you? Or do you want to see those images, I don't know what to do with my hand here, those images as some sort of validation of what the person is saying? Or because you're also an image junkie, and so you want to see the image, you want to see the card so you can get your own associations with the card. I've had people who said to me, I don't care about the cards, don't show me pictures of the cards or whatever, I don't care, just to give me the message. But I think a lot of people like to see the cards. And so to me that's a difference. As a client, you need to be aware of what you want. And then as a reader, I know I like the cards, and I'm an image junkie, so I want to show the cards. So I think that's a part of me that remains very attached to the cards, whatever else I might, there might even be a resistance in me to going that messages out, just riffing off into space thing, because I am kind of earthy, and I love the images, and so I want to bathe and play in the images, So as a reader, I think I like to show the images. I like people to see the images. So there you go. I don't think that one is wrong or right. I think there's a lot of preference there, and I think each reader kind of sets their bar of where they want to be, or what's natural to them. So there you have it. Consciously choose a card that you attribute a unique personal meaning to. I was thinking about that a little bit, and I'm not sure that I have any cards. I mean, certainly there are cards that I am more attached to than others, like when we've talked about soul cards and these kinds of talks. But I don't know that I have a particularly unique personal meaning. I can relate to pretty much all of them. I'm in my mid-50s, I've kind of been through it. So I'm not going to sit here and go through the deck and think, oh, how about this one, this one, this one? No. I'll use as an example, though, a situation. I'll use the Seven of Swords. I think that there can be a tremendous number of interpretations of the Seven of Swords, and one that I would not have thought of. Okay, so I'm doing a reading with my sister. It was, around the kitchen table at Christmas or something. We were laying out some cards, and that came up, and I thought, I don't think that's the traditional meaning. I'm not gonna. And so I just asked her. I said, "What do you see happening here?" And she said, "He's disarming them." And it's like, oh, isn't that interesting? That's another reason why it's nice to show the cards. People might have different. The person you're reading for might have their own interpretation. And I think that's totally valid. And in that case, I might say, and maybe I did, well, traditionally this is a card that's looked at as thieving, but if that's how you see it, that's how you see it. I think now I might just let it go and say, yes, I could see that being that. I probably wouldn't even tell them the traditional meaning. So to me, that's that person's intuition. Especially with how rapidly, if she had looked at it and not had any response, then maybe I would have gone ahead with what it traditionally means. So there you go. Yes, your clients, your people you're reading for also have the intuition, and so I think, again, that's part of the reason I like to show the card. Well, how is it hitting this other person? Alright, so I'm calling it done here. I've managed to ramble for 17 minutes. That's my take on tarot intuition. It's just all over when you're doing a reading. Alright, take care. Bye-bye.